Hello and welcome to the First Brick Property Podcast, episode 21. My name is KM and I'm the director of First Brick Property Buyers Agency. The purpose of the podcast is to bring a casual style show to discuss all things property, with education being the key. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned investor, this show will be able to further your knowledge and really remove any barriers to getting involved in the exciting and fun world of property. Now, I've heard that my co-host has been in a police lineup before. Of course, my regular co-host is with me today, Hanny Rosie. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Good, good. Is there a story behind that?
There is. It's not what it sounds like. I was in a police lineup. The story is that my cousin was a detective for the New South Wales Police, and they had a suspect, and they needed he needed to be picked out of a lineup. So we fit the description.
Yeah.
So she asked me to get a few friends together. We were still in high school at the time. It was an interesting conversation we all had with our parents.
Yep.
But yeah, we did the police lineup. No issues. If anyone was interested, the suspect wasn't picked out of the police lineup. So he walked out.
Got away.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's the police lineup story.
That is a very different story.
It was an interesting experience.
Is it on your resume?
Yeah. No, I think I'll keep that one off the resume.
I've worked for the police, Secret
Yeah.
Service, FBI.
Look, the biggest problem was that we were promised pizza and we didn't get it.
If there are any police officers listening, how do you get people in your police lineup off a pizza? And the criminals come running. The criminals come running at you. That's an interesting story.
Yeah.
We'll get into the show today.
Yeah.
This episode's taken a little while to get together. We've been both very, very busy last week and a bit. But the People's Show is back.
Yeah.
It is Q&A episode. We've had a bunch of questions sent in to us. We picked a couple, and if we have time, we'll go through some more. We'll just get straight into it. So, do you want to hit us with the first question, Hanny?
Yeah, the first question is from Harry. And he said, you mentioned in your last podcast that the majority of Australians stop after one or two investment properties. What advice would you give to people that fall in this category?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Spells his name very similarly to yours.
Yeah.
Coincidence. I don't know. So Harry, it's a good question and correct. Most Australians do stop. Before we get into, what advice to, we should look at the reason why people are in that category to begin with. And probably the biggest reason is there is no forward plan. Most people investment strategy plans that we come across, we obviously speak to a lot of people in our business. And one of the first questions is, do you have just, property, and then, when we're ready or we have enough money, we'll buy another one. And then when we're ready and we have enough money, we'll buy another one. And that's the answer. A game of and not a game of bricks and mortar at all. It's really all about financing, and if you get your financing correct, then you can get yourself out of the first one and two property slump. So when we're looking at purchasing properties, what we do anyway is we build an investment plan, and you should definitely do this as well if you're not going to use our services or any professional services, a financial planner or accountant, whatnot. You should do this on your own anyway. Look where you want to end up and think, how do you want to get there? And look at your income and your personal story. If you're a single income, are you going to get married soon? Or are you going to have a dual income somehow? Or is your income going to increase? Or if you're, in a couple, are you going to have children? Is your income going to decrease as a result? Are you going to have added expenses? All of this is important because the biggest issue with getting out of property 1 and 2 and going to property 3 is always serviceability. And when we say serviceability, we mean, paying the mortgage down for your third property. because obviously you got two loans, and the third one's going to be another bit of debt, and if you can't pay off that debt, then you won't get the loan, and that's why people get stuck at one and two, especially if they already own their principal place of residence as well, and there's no rent coming in, then that's a big shortfall there. So, well, the advice I would give is, speak to a buyer's agent, a financial planner, an accountant, and really get everything planned out, so that you can get out of that. And if you've already got the first two properties, again, speak to a financial planner or accountant or a buyer's agent, and they can look at potentially you might have to sell one to get back in the game um, at a better spot, or maybe there are just some tweaks that you can play around with the existing properties to get you into a better, I guess, income story.
Yeah, I think you hit the hammer on the head when you said it is a game of finance.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the planning comes into play. It becomes really important because when you get an investment property, you're looking at properties that could increase in value, where it's equity that you're waiting for the equity to grow, and that's a bit more long term. And then you can get investment properties that are maybe cash flow positive or very cash heavy, both of which can help you move on to the next property. But again, it is a timing game, and that's where the plan will come into play. And that's why it's very, very important to have people who are able to assist you with the planning and the financial side of things, and a good mortgage broker as well, who can do things like tweak your properties or things like that to help you get to that next stage.
Yeah, for sure. A good mortgage broker is very undervalued, I guess. They could, obviously the brokers are the ones paying with the finance for you. So, maybe refinancing, looking at different finance structures. There's a lot of things that they can do to try and put you in a better position for property 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. So yeah, definitely surround yourself with a good team would be my advice, and look forward thinking.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Thanks, Harry.
Let's move on to the next questions. What steps should I take? This is from Heather. What steps should I take to turn my negatively geared investment property into a positively geared property?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I like the question because Heather's clearly thinking properly.
Yeah.
She's thinking with a smart hat on. She's looking. I think she's clearly realized that maybe negatively gearing isn't a strategy. It's something that we speak about a lot, and a lot of people think negatively gearing is a strategy, whereas it's not. You are losing money. Negatively gearing is a moment in time. But yeah, so good question. Honestly, it's not a complicated answer because sometimes it is a little bit out of your hands. I mean, if your property is already negatively geared, you're going to have to pay off debt essentially to bring the loan down to a point where your repayments are lower than your rent, or you're going to increase your rent, or a mixture of both. You don't have to pay off your loan down if you have an offset account. You can pump a bunch of money into your offset, move all your income, put your salary into it, your rent, your dividends, any kind of income that you got, all goes into your offset account. So it looks like you paid it off. So your interest drops, so your overall repayments drop. And then you get to a point where your rent is covering your loan and more. Otherwise, a bit of renovations or value adding to add more rent, where you have to be careful when you're doing that you're not overcapitalizing. Because you could end up more negatively geared, I guess. But I think, for me, there's not too much you can do. A lot of it is just a time game. The more you pay off, the less negative you become. Do you have any other tips?
Yeah, like when you look at negative gearing and you look at your rental income statement, the two biggest expenses that affect negative gearing are interest and depreciation. Now, this is where you can be positively geared for cash and potentially negatively geared for tax. And that's a really good situation to be in, because if you're positively geared for cash, effectively you've got more money in your pocket at the end of each month or at the end of the financial year. However, when you lodge your tax return and can be negatively really good situation to be in.
Yeah.
Because it effectively means you've got cash in your pocket, but at the end of the day, when you lodge your tax return, you know, cash you're positively geared. So if you can start by getting into a situation like that, that's probably the first step to becoming really,
Sure.
yeah.
I guess that's nirvana, isn't
Yeah.
it? When you got money coming into your pocket, but on
Yeah.
paper you're still, negative.
Yeah.
So you're getting your tax deductions there. Ever answers your question.
Yeah.
We'll go to the next question. This question is from Myrna. At what point is it best to enter the market that we get?
Yeah.
Um,
You know, we've said previously
Yeah.
as well, is you get into the market when you're ready.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Australia is not one market. There's hundreds and thousands of markets within markets within markets, right? So you have your states, they're all different markets, and then within your states, for example, New South Wales, you got Sydney. In Sydney, you got Western Sydney, Southwest Sydney, North Sydney,
Yeah.
the eastern suburbs, and then within those areas, you got smaller clusters of markets. So there are markets constantly moving, and there are different markets moving at different times. So you might have, eastern suburbs of Sydney going down, whilst the western suburbs of Sydney going up,
Yeah.
or vice versa. Or Adelaide doing well while Perth is doing poorly. So correct. The right time is when you are ready and when you can enter the market and comfortably service your loan, and you have buffers in place in case you don't get a tenant, or in case there are acts of nature that take over, and random occurrences.
Yeah.
Should I save more or get in now? I guess you can look at it as if you can save quicker than the market is moving, then keep saving.
Yeah.
But if the market is moving much quicker than you can save, then it would probably be better to get in and ride that wave, I guess. So right now, again, different markets. So it depends where you're looking and depends where your kind of price point is. In Sydney, things are a bit slow. So if you can save really quick, maybe worth holding. But if you're in Brisbane or Melbourne and things are moving a bit quicker, might be time to get in the market.
And back to the point about going in when you're ready, and we touched on this in the first question, it's really important to have a plan. You need to have an investment strategy, you need to have a plan, and you need to know what you're buying, when you're going to buy it, and how that's going to affect the stages in your life that you're in. So if you're buying a property now, but you know you're going to get married in 6 months and you need to put money towards a wedding or something like that, or if you're already married and you're going to have a child, you need to take all those things into account, have a plan, understand where you are in your life stages, and it'll help you determine when you're ready and whether or not you're ready now or whether you'll be ready later on. So keep all of that in mind when you're determining whether or not you're ready.
Beautiful. Thank you, Myrna. You want to hit the next one?
Yeah. Would you recommend fixing my interest rate for 2 years at the current fixed rates of 2.79%, or continue with my variable rate at 3.5%? From Josh.
Joshy. Thank you, Josh. It's a tough question to answer without knowing your full situation, I guess.
Yeah.
But essentially, you have to look at it in a couple of different point of views. If you are not planning to do anything with your money, you're not planning to make any purchases, you're not planning to do anything for the next 2 years, in terms of big, large purchases like another property or whatnot, then a fixed rate may be more competitive for you and maybe a better idea. In the flip side, if you are planning to, maybe purchase a property or a car or, a wedding, whatever it is that you've got a big lump sum amount of money that you need to use, a fixed rate might not be for you, because obviously when it's fixed, your money kind of gets locked in. That's one point of view. The other point of view is, if again, we speak about offset accounts a lot because they're so important. If you have an offset account and you have enough money in it, your repayments may be less at 3.5%, because when you're in a fixed rate, you don't have access to an offset account 99% of the time. So, and a lot of people don't know that. So you might have a lower rate, but you're getting charged interest on the full amount of the loan. Whereas if you have an offset account, say your loan's 500 grand and you have 400,000 in your offset, you're paying 3.5%, but only on 100,000. So your repayments are much lower. So really depends on your situation, what your future plans are. If you have an offset account, how much money in that offset account. So there's a few variables there to look at.
Yeah. So keep in mind as well that if you do fix your rate, there are break fees if you break your loan before the fixed rate period ends, and that includes selling your property. So if you have a plan to sell your property anytime before that fixed rate term ends, you will incur break fees. And what you said about the offset account is correct. It's really important. And it could be a situation where the answer is, both. If you've got, multiple loans on multiple properties, it could be that you fix some and then you keep some variable and you put, because you've got your one offset account against one loan. So that could be variable and then you fix the rest. So that's where, you should speak to a good mortgage broker or financial planner or someone who can help you work it out. Because sometimes it's not just a straight cut answer. If you've got multiple loans, you don't need to have all variable or all fixed across all the loans. The answer could just be a mixture of both, depending on your situation.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely the more properties you have, the more complex the situation, and the more need for a team around you. So definitely it's just general advice. We don't know the situation. So contact your financial planner, your accountant, and your broker, and get that team around you working for you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh. Peter has sent us a question. Would you recommend pulling out the 10K super if we have, if people don't, there's been a leeway with the superannuation that if you've been affected by COVID, you are eligible to pull out some super.
So the eligibility criteria before you pull out that 10 grand from your super.
Yeah.
So very quickly, to be eligible, your working hours by 20% at least. And then you can pull out up to $10,000 in the 2020 financial year, which is coming to an end in a week.
Yep.
And then you can pull another 10,000 to consider your eligibility, because even if you apply and you get it, but you're not eligible, that money could be clawed back. There are penalties, there are interest, there are definitely repercussions if you take it out when you're not eligible. So once you get through that hurdle, if you determine that you're eligible and you pull it out, I guess it all depends on your circumstances. The idea is that if you've been affected by COVID and you need to pull out that money, it might be better used elsewhere than for the purposes of investing.
Yeah.
But again, look at your personal situation, speak to a financial planner or your accountant if you need to. And I think the most important thing is to determine your eligibility.
Yeah.
And then work it out. See where's the best way you can use it.
Yeah.
If you do need to pull it out.
Yeah, for sure. So looking at the purpose of this scheme is, to give people some bit of money, for people who have lost their jobs and whatnot.
Yeah.
So to be eligible, is that you got to fit that criteria, and if you fit that criteria, you might need that money to buy staples or pay your mortgages or whatever. If not, you're probably not eligible anyway. So
yeah.
But it does, I guess, depend on the situation.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. Our next question is from Scott. How are the banks treating income that includes JobKeeper payments?
Yeah, that's another good question, Scott. I was actually with Ferdy from Power Loans yesterday, and we were having a chat, and this question came up in conversation. I said, how are the banks treating it? And because I asked him this question when COVID kind of first started and JobKeeper came out, then I kind of came back to him and said, now it's been a few months. What are the banks looking at? So back when I first spoke with him, it was kind of our business as normal. JobKeeper payments will be looked at, and they will see that your income has reduced, and they're looking at your normal income. Now it's more so they understand that you're still getting paid, but when they're not going to really do anything until you go back to full-time wage.
Yeah.
So JobKeeper payments are pretty much putting you on hold, I guess. And once you go back to full-time hours and your full-time pay, then they would relook at your situation.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Scott.
And our final question from Julia. Do you have any general finance and money management books that you could recommend for someone still in university?
Yeah, awesome, Julia. I like to read. One of us does.
Yeah.
So I've got a list of books. I think it's a good time to start reading now that you're in university, and get ready before you finish and start. You can be like 10 steps ahead of everyone else. There is a photo on our social media pages of some books, but just to rattle some off, my favorite book when I was in university, and probably the book I recommend the most to everyone always, is called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a great book just about general finance, but it's written in Babylonian times, so it's a bit of a story rather than like syllabus. It's a bit of an easy read, nice and interesting. So that's just a general finance book. Beginner's Guide to Wealth, is a great starting point. Just again, general finance, a lot of nice quotes in there and a lot of basic principles. And then I think a good property book that you could start on. This is the first book I ever read about property. It was called My 4-Year-Old the Property Investor. I don't know who wrote it, and I don't know if you can find it in bookstores. I found it randomly, but if you can find it, it's a great read, and it's literally written. The author wrote it so that his 4-year-old would be able to read it and understand how to invest in property, and the principles of property. So I think those are some good starting points for someone at university. But if you jump on our Facebook page, there's a post with a lot of books that we put up on that.
Yeah, you had a giveaway as well, didn't you?
We did do a giveaway. What book did we give away? Can't remember.
Yeah.
The Armchair Guide to Property Investing, something like that. By Ben and Bryce, by Bryce Holdway and Ben Kingsley.
Oh, yeah.
From Empower Wealth.
Yeah.
So they have a great podcast as well. They do great work. So we had a couple extra books. So we did a giveaway back at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And actually Myrna, I don't know if it's the same Myrna that sent us the question. Myrna was the winner. So
hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah, you better have read that book.
Yeah, actually, if you reach out, we'd love to hear what your take is on that book as well.
True that.
Yeah,
Myrna. Reach out. Henny, you told me before you're not a big reader. You have any books or not?
Honestly, the first and probably the only book I've really read cover to cover was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh,
and that was, along with everybody else.
Of course. How did I forget?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I did enjoy that book, and I probably read it. I read it early on, and I probably didn't execute, or I wasn't in a position to execute everything that I read.
Yeah.
I should probably go back and read it again, along with some of the things that you've mentioned as well.
Yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a good book.
Yeah. It was a good way to, it taught me a lot right at the start.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a good introductory book as well for me.
Yeah. The whole Robert Kiyosaki series. Should go through them.
Yeah.
Listening. Hopefully this episode answered some of those questions. And you can find all of our content on socials. Just search First Brick Property. If you have any topics you'd like discussed, or you got questions, send them in at hello@firstbrick.com.au, or shoot us a message on our social platforms. We're going to start. Just read one out today, but I didn't bring it out. Forgot to. So next week we'll read some reviews out. Send us reviews. 5 stars. It helps us get higher in the chart.